Well, howdy folks, welcome to this episode of Vern's Misadventures. This misadventure was quite an ordeal. Big Red either is allergic to beavers or addicted to tow trucks. Throughout this misadventure here, as we're about to show you, we try to figure out which one of those things and maybe a course of treatment. Our story begins the weekend before New Year's Day here. It was the last weekend of 2018. I head up to Decatur, Texas to pick up family members and bring them home. On the way back, we stopped at Buc-ee's there, and that's across the street from Texas Motor Speedway, and the truck wasn't giving me any trouble up to this point. I pull up to the pump and I proceed to fill up the truck with diesel. As soon as I start the truck again, it starts running rough. Maybe not the best idea, but I thought, you know what, let's see if we can get to the highway and make it home, you know? Well, we get about as far as the street where we can get in everybody's way, and well, the truck stalls and will not restart. So I crank the batteries to death, and lo and behold, we have to get a tow truck. So we wait a couple hours, we get a tow truck, and we get the truck towed home. So the next day, I proceed to try to figure out what it is. Now, because it was running fine until I got fuel, my first thought was, well, I got bad fuel. Must be it, right? What else could it be? So I proceeded to empty the tank by jumping a wire to the pink and whatever color wire it is off of the inertia sensor, or inertia switch. You can jump a hot wire to that after you disconnect the connector, and it will run the fuel pump full time, and you can use that to pump out all the fuel out of the tank into suitable containers. So I pumped out a little over 30 gallons of fuel and put in 10 gallons of good fuel and primed the fuel system, and she fired right up. Should have been fixed, right? Well, 2 weeks later, I decided, you know what, we're going to take a little run out to Buc-ee's. We're going to go in Terrell, you know, and go to Starbucks, get some coffee, maybe go get something to eat at Buc-ee's. And, you know, it should have been a fun little excursion, no big deal. And there we go. As soon as we try to leave Buc-ee's, truck starts acting up again. Repeating the same wisdom as before. Head out to the street. Maybe we make it home. We get about as far as the street there, and she stalls, dies, and leaves us stranded again. So, back on the tow truck we go, and then I had to proceed to figure out, well, what is wrong with this truck? I used my scan tool, the Auto Ingenuity, and pulled the codes, and I found one for a bad fuel injector, poor contribution injector number 3. So I thought, well, can one bad injector kill the whole engine? So I Googled it. Turns out it could if it failed in such a way that it allowed compression to enter the fuel system. And basically the compression gets up in there, and it pushes the fuel back and aerates the fuel in the fuel bowl, and before you know it, you lose one cylinder after another until the engine dies. Now that pretty much fit my symptoms, because that's what it acted like, was it was running out of fuel. And I thought, well, we don't have any other evidence. We had good IPR, we had good FICM, we had good control pressure. I didn't see anything that should have caused it not to run. Now, I didn't have a fuel pressure gauge, so I couldn't test that. And the pump seemed to work fine when it emptied the tank, and it seemed to work fine for 2 weeks, so I had no reason at this point to suspect the pump. So the only clue I had to lead me in any direction was the one code for the bad injector. So I ran with it. As we'll see, we went ahead and replaced injector number 3. Alright, so we'll set out to replace injector number 3. Got my work table, I got my steps. I have my little yoga mat up here. Got the battery charger going. Trying to bring the batteries back up. I cranked it to death. Cranked the batteries to death yesterday doing some testing, determining what the problem was.
First order of business will be to remove this charge air cooler pipe, intercooler pipe if you will. So we got to pull these two clamps right here, one here and one down here. Before you want to take these loose, what you want to do is oil the threads. So I have a little bit of WD-40 left. Let's just see if we can get a little oil on there. Yeah, that's good. And then at this end, we'll do that too. Just a little oil on the threads. That's good enough. The world's cheapest tripod. It's seen better days. We're going to retire this. So, I'm probably not going to be able to prop the phone up to be able to record while I work. So periodically I'll check in, show what we've done. Alright, so luckily it's number 3 we got to take out of here, which is on the odd bank, which is the passenger side, because otherwise we'd have to pull the coolant bottle and the intake and all that good stuff, thick them. So this is the easier side, except what we're going to need to do is we're going to have to get this wiring harness out of the way. I was hoping to charge the batteries while they worked, but obviously that's not going to work. I'm going to have to take this one loose right here, and then remove all these connectors here. This is for the glow plugs. So we're going to have to remove all those. I'm going to separate this connector here. Pull up all these parts where it mounts on the studs. So like right in here, it's mounted to the bolts we're going to have to take out. So all that crap's got to go. So yeah, we just disconnect this hose here and then pull these 3 nuts off here. And then rather than pulling on the connector and breaking something that we don't really want to have to buy right now, we'll just move this whole hose connector, throw it all over there, probably near the alarm siren, and I think we'll be good to go. I'm gonna have to do a bunch of stuff with the electrical, so probably we're gonna have to at least temporarily disconnect the batteries while I get this off of here. Bring this whole harness up and over and out of the way. Alright, so we got some of the wiring out of the way. That's all strung out over here. Woo! And then, so here's the placement of the studs. First stud is over here. So the first stud's over here just past this oil filler. And then they come around here. And the last one's over here by where the transmission dipstick is. So that's where studs go. And the rest are just bolt heads. Get this cover off of here. Should be able to get her loose. Alright, so here we have the valve cover out of the way. And this is the oil rail that we need to remove next. This part right here. It's got a bunch of small Torx bolts that hold it together. So we'll find the appropriate size and we'll put that together. Let's see here. This wire here, this actually goes around here. It goes around here and tucks up through here. So we can put it over here to be out of our way. Alright, so before we finish pulling the bolts all out of the oil rail, it'd be a good idea to go ahead and get the dummy plug and the standpipe right here. Standpipe's over here, dummy plug's here, and those got to come out. So let me work on that. Cover a couple tools you'll need. Now I bought this Cobalt kit that has the the Torx bits on it and whatnot. The T30 is what fits the bolt for the oil rail. Thing with this is, when you get back by the air conditioning box there, you're going to need a lower profile one. Another tool you'll need is this low profile, if you have the newer ones. Now this is a 12mm hex, And you're going to need this if you have the updated dummy plugs and standpipes. 12 millimeter. It's a snap-on piece too. Look like it's a FHRM 12. That makes sense. Okay, so just wanted to cover that real quick. All right, well, we got the oil rail off finally. Took some doing. That low profile T30 that I had was not short enough, so I actually had to knock the roll pin out of it, and then I pulled the Torx bit out of it, and I actually put it on this grinder here, held it with some vice grips and ran it on this grinder to get it shortened up as short as I could. I got it to where it fit pretty close to where the Torx bit was barely outside this socket part of it, but it still wasn't quite short enough. So what I did was I got a quarter inch drive socket, and I put that on there, and that's a little bit shorter yet. So that gives us just that much more clearance. And then I use this little quarter inch drive breaker bar to break it loose. I was a little worried that it would fall apart, so I put a piece of masking tape around it and then jammed it in there so it would stay in the socket, since we no longer have the hole in it for the roll pin. So that's what that took. Now I got it apart. It gets really tight there by this AC housing here. This deal right here, down in there. So all that's left now is I got to pull the hold down clamp and the connector, and I should be able to get that injector out of there. Take it down for my core and then get a new one. Now I just got to put it all back together. Piece of cake. Alright, so here we have the new fuel injector installed. Got the connector snapped into place here. The injector locks into position there on the clamp. So its position as far as rotationally is fixed. So here's Little Red, needs a transmission. Here's Big Red. I'm in the middle of putting a new fuel injector in it. Got the injector in, torqued down. Just got to put the rest of it back together. It was okay because we had Nita's car for transportational needs. But look at Nita's car. Coolant leak. So it's going to get some warranty work done. It's a beautiful day. Alright, so we got the oil rail back on there. Still have to reinstall standpipe and the dummy plugs, and then after I put the cover back on, I'll put the ICP sensor again, which goes in this hole right here. These bolts, these little bitty bolts here, they only go down to 10 foot-pounds, and I was able to use this setup here. So I used my little socket that I rigged up here, where I ground down that T30, make it fit in this, make it fit closer. Then I was able to use this U-joint and this quarter-inch extension, then the adapter, and then of course my trusty torque wrench. So there you go. That's how we solved that. Got them torqued properly. So next step will be to install standpipe, dummy plug, and valve cover. Okay, so we've got the standpipe in, and the dummy plug up here is in. Before we put the valve cover on, we're going to want to reconnect the injector. Just in case we have an issue where we end up pushing it back in there, we'll be able to put it back without having to take the cover off again. So I get that in place, and then put the little lock. I removed the metal locks because I had a bad experience kind of push-in method. So anyway, I got that here in a jar. We won't lose it. All right, well, it's all back together. I let it run for quite a while till it warmed up, basically, and then some. Probably a good 20-30 minutes while I cleaned up and everything. Before I leave the driveway, I want to do a power balance. I need to get this back where it goes. Okay. Yeah, we'll hook up auto ingenuity and I'll put the screen recorder on it. We'll see what we see. Not setting codes for the injector anymore, so let's go ahead and see if we can do the power balance. Initiate. It's a straight line. There's no deep V's in it, that's for sure. Had a long crank though. I would like to see if we can. Yeah, let me check the IPR. Pick 'em. Pick 'em, sync. At this point, thinking that the truck was repaired and needing to go get my wife picked up from work, I set out to head out to Lancaster to pick up my wife from work. And I made it all of about 2 miles down the road, only to have the truck stall and fail to restart again. Cranked the batteries to death, and then had to make the dreaded phone call to the wife to tell her, hey, you're going to need to find a way home, and we need to get a tow truck to tow the truck home. Isn't that cool? So we got the truck towed home. It occurred to me that I didn't have enough diagnostic equipment to get to the bottom of this problem. Everything I had showed that everything was fine. I had enough voltage on the FICM. You remember seeing on Auto Ingenuity we had 48, 48 and a half. You only have to have 45 or better. So that was fine. FICM sync showed a 1. That's a bit. You either have FICM sync or you don't. 1 is yes, 0 is no. So that was fine. Oil pressure. On the high pressure oil pressure, you have to have 500 psi to start the truck. And we had well above 500. I mean, there was still some air in the system from having the injector out and the oil reel off and all that, but it was working its way out, and it was getting better. The IPR should run between 15% and 85%, and you might have seen while I was cranking it, and it had kind of a long crank, that it actually did max out the IPR at 85%, trying to build some pressure. But that was just while it was clearing the air from the system, and that, it built the pressure, and it was fine after that. So, once you get it out on the highway and drive it at those speeds for a ways, then you usually clear all the air out of the system, and then you have a good solid start without all those issues. But it was good to verify that, make sure that everything was good as far as that went. So I had FICM, I had oil pressure, the IPR was working properly. I had FICM sync with the camshaft, so a family member had suggested it might be the camshaft sensor, but if that was the case, I wouldn't have FICM sync, or when it started to fail, I would lose FICM sync, and that wasn't the case either. So, yeah, it just occurred to me that, I really need a way to test the fuel pressure, because at this point I was really beginning to think, something must be happening. I'm losing fuel pressure. It's acting like it's running out of fuel right before it stalls and dies.
And I'm like, I don't really know how that could be happening other than, you know, a bad fuel pump or possibly a clogged filter. So I ordered a fuel pressure tester. And then, of course, when I got the fuel pressure tester, it became apparent that I didn't have the right fitting. And so I had to order the special fitting for the 6-liter Powerstroke. And when those finally arrived, I was able to further diagnose the situation and figure out that the fuel pump was bad. But man, what a journey to get to this point, huh? So let's continue with the video.
Alright, I might have figured out what's wrong with Big Red here. Alright, this is a high pressure oil system here, and it's working. See, we're getting enough power, or we're getting enough pressure to fire it. We're also getting power to the fuel pump, but I don't hear the fuel pump running at this time, now that it's in a state of failure. You should be able to hear it run, and I don't hear it running. Now, just to double check that I am getting power to the fuel pump, I put a test light on that lead that runs over to it. That's at the inertia switch. Anyway, the pink and black wire runs down to the fuel pump. So you see that it's lit, so it's giving power, and yet now I killed the batteries. But I think we just might be onto something here. So anyway, I don't think the fuel pump's working. I think it gets hot after a while and quits on us, which is why it acts like it's running out of fuel.
So yeah, so here I was. I just finished spending a couple days and $260 or so putting a fuel injector in the truck that was going to fix all my problems and make them go away. And that didn't work out. So no more grasping at straws. Because money, you know, I don't have that kind of money to throw away for nothing. So what I realized is that I needed to get that fuel pressure gauge, and so I decided that instead of buying a fuel pump and hoping for the best, I was going to get the test equipment and verify that in fact the fuel pump was not making the pressure I need, and that way replace it with a little more knowledge on hand and start applying a little more common sense to this project.
No, Ginger Puppy, that's not to eat. Look, that's our new fitting we needed for the old Powerstroke there. So there's a plug over by the engine bay mounted fuel filter housing, and you take that plug out and you put this in place. So this got that cap on there. So once you take the cap off, see,
Well, that's good.
then you have a test port, and then you can hook up this gauge to that, like so.
Well,
Yeah, so that'll hook on there like so. Then I'll be able to test my fuel pressure with the Big Red there, and I'll verify for certain that my fuel pump has died before I go spend $300 to $400 on a new one. So there sets the stage for this weekend's activities.
Alright, next order of business was to get that fuel pressure test fitting installed on the truck and proceed to see if we can test the fuel pressure. So that meant charging up the batteries and cycling the key a few times, see if we could build some fuel pressure, and if we could, we'd run the truck and see if we could replicate the failure, watch the fuel pressure while it dropped. But as it turned out, well, you'll see.
Is the little Allen head plug that I got to pull out to put in the pressure tap there. So I put that in there. Yeah. So it's like you can see it, but I don't know if I can get my hands and tools in there to work with it. The easiest way to get to it would be to take the cold side pipe off of here, the intercooler pipe. So pull this clamp here, take it loose from down here. Of course, that means the intake has to come out. I don't have to take the entire intake off, I just take it from here. Probably pull this clamp here and basically take the intake out of the truck. A lot more direct shot to get this installed. Now once it's installed, I think I can leave it on there. I don't see any reason I couldn't. If I was a mechanic and I had to work on multiple Powerstroke, I'd probably want to keep this with my pressure gauge here. But since that's not the case for me, I think I can install it on the truck and leave it on the truck. And that way if I ever want to test it again, I just take the cap off and test it. So that's my plan. So the first thing I've learned to do in this case is to remove the dipstick, because I am on dipstick number 3 now since I've owned the truck. 5.5 years. I have broken 2 of them already, so first thing we'll do is remove the dipstick. There we go. We'll lay that down here where it won't get broken, hopefully. We'll go ahead and get that intake out of there and get that cold side pipe. And once it's installed, I think I can snake my fingers around there to put the gauge on. Kind of come in through here or something. Alright, so I've got the Canadian air filter out. There's a bracket that goes right here, and it goes on the end of the filter there, so I'd take that loose. And the clamp right here, get that loose. So now the heat shield right here is going to have to come off. I've got one of the nuts off already. I gotta get the other one, and then that'll lift out of there. Let's see, we got the connector loose here, and then we'll get this filter monitor connector off. We'll pull this part of the intake out, get that out of our way. Then we should be able to snake this intercooler pipe out of the way. Then we can get our fitting installed. Alright, so we got the intake out of the way. We got the cold side pipe out of the way. And then I used my long pry bar, put it underneath the fitting there, and just push the radiator hose down. And we are now removing the plug so we can connect our fitting. Alright, we got our new fitting installed. Well, looks like we found out today that we're not building any fuel pressure whatsoever. It looks like the fuel pump finally gave up completely. From what I understand, they usually just go out, but apparently mine was going out slowly or something, working for a little while and then slowing down and quitting. And then today it didn't even want to start at all. It didn't want to even pump at all. So we'll just go ahead and call the pump, I think. I verified that there was power getting to the pump by putting a test light on the connector. So it's getting power, it wasn't running. So no big deal. It's just a matter of coming up with some money for getting a pump now. Awesome. Now we know.
Installing the new fuel pump is actually pretty simple, but it does take a few extra steps. You have to use a special tool to release and remove the 4 fuel lines going in. Well, there's 2 going in and 2 coming out of the fuel pump. And then you have 2 connectors, and you have 3 nuts on the back of the fuel pump that hold it in place. That part's pretty straightforward. One thing you need to worry about also is the drive shaft's proximity to the fuel pump. It's going to be pretty tight to get the fuel pump out of there with the drive shaft in place. So I took the flange bolts, there were 4 of them, I had to take them loose from the transfer case, and then I just moved the drive shaft over, and that gave me the necessary clearance to get it out of there.
Okay, there's the old fuel pump. And then I've got my fuel pressure gauge attached again. And that's right here. So we will check all this. Okay. That was the first cycle. I don't know if you noticed the first two out here. I'll take you underneath there. We have a new sound now. Fuel pump's running. Oh, there we go, we're getting fuel in the hose. Hot diggity, look at all that fuel pressure, will you? Look at all that fuel pressure, will you? Hit it again. Oh yeah, 60 psi. Look at that, running truck. How about that crap? Just let that run for a little bit. Alright, well, we've been running for a little bit. See that the fuel pressure's actually creeped up a little bit. Now we get the air out of the system. Right around 65, I would say, give or take. Now, when it failed and died before, it set a code. So, probably gonna remove the ground cables once I let it run for a little while. Remove the ground cables and clear the code, see if it sets any more. Sounds good. Alright, so yeah, I disconnected the negative battery cables. Reconnected them after about a minute. And there we go. There's our fuel pressure again. 60. So it hasn't immediately reset any check engine lights. That's a good thing. There it is. Alright, we'll check the leaks. I don't see any. I had a... Oops. Yeah. I had a little glob right there, but I just hadn't wiped it off. I think it was assembly lube from putting the cap on there. I opened it up to verify that it had a filter. And it did. And then we had some drips on these lines at one point that I hadn't wiped off. But those are clean now. And there's the other lines. Those are clean. So I'm going to call this leak free and finished. Awesome. Well, I'm about to take Big Red out of the driveway. Last time we tried this, it didn't go very well. But last time we didn't have a new fuel pump. Maybe that makes the difference. So our little test drive actually turned out quite well. I just kind of took it for a little rip down the freeway and back to the house, and I didn't end up on a tow truck. Yeah! So then I went ahead and drove it to work on Saturday, where I drove it to work and back again, and it gave me no trouble whatsoever either time I drove to work, and that's 37 miles one way. So, you know, I put about 160 miles thereabouts, give or take, on the truck since having put it back together, and so far so good. But, you know, we'll see.
I believe it's fixed. I think it was fuel pump all along. I don't think I had bad fuel. I think the bad fuel injector was actually just kind of a code set as it was failing and running out of fuel. So that was a lesson learned. So hey, thanks for watching the video, and there's another Vern's Misadventure coming to a close. Y'all take care.